The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They dreamed of meeting other beings. They imagined friendship among the stars. In the year 2347, humanity finally answered that call. They built ships that could travel faster than light. They ventured into the unknown with hope in their hearts. What they found was not what they expected. The galaxy was full of life. 12 ancient civilizations had formed an alliance called the Galactic Concord. These races had existed for over 100,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had mapped every corner of known space. They had created wonders that humans could barely understand, and they had already studied Earth long ago. Their scouts had visited the small blue planet. They had watched the primitive creatures walking on two legs. They had recorded their findings and moved on. The report was simple and cold. It said that Earth was a Class 7 primitive world. The beings there were emotional and unstable. They fought among themselves constantly. They had no special abilities. They were not worth watching. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was the first human to stand before the Galactic Concord. She was a brave woman with dark hair and determined eyes. She had trained her whole life for this moment. The great hall of Station Primarch stretched around her like a cathedral made of light. 12 platforms floated in a circle, each holding representatives of the ancient races. The Novari were beings made of living crystal. Light moved through their bodies like blood. The Cathari were insect-like creatures who shared one mind across millions of bodies. The Morvani were tall and thin, their skin like polished metal. Each race was beautiful and terrifying in its own way. Alina held up the holographic document that contained humanity's application for membership. Her voice was steady as she spoke about her people. She talked about human art and music. She described human courage and creativity. She explained how far humanity had come in such a short time. The Novari High Speaker did not let her finish. His crystalline form pulsed with cold blue light as he raised one hand. "Enough," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "We have reviewed your species already. Your kind lacks psionic capability. You cannot touch minds or bend reality with thought. You have no natural weapons. No armor grows on your skin. No venom fills your teeth. You cannot regrow lost limbs. Your bodies break easily, and your lives are terribly short." He paused, and the light inside him flickered with something like amusement. "What could you possibly offer the Concord?" Alina tried to respond. She wanted to tell them about human determination. She wanted to explain that short lives made humans work harder. But the voting had already begun. One by one, the 12 races cast their decisions. 12 ancient civilizations. 12 rejections. Not a single vote in humanity's favor. The Concord granted humanity something called observer status. The High Speaker explained this with barely hidden contempt. Humans could trade in certain areas. They could travel through approved routes, but they would never sit at the council's table. Their messages would be marked as low priority. Their calls for help would be answered last, if at all. Alina returned to Earth with the news. The journey home felt longer than the journey out. She sat alone in her cabin and watched the stars pass by. Each point of light now seemed colder than before. The reaction on Earth was mixed. Some people were angry. They shouted that humanity should prove itself through war. Others were sad. They said that maybe the Concord was right. Maybe humans were not special after all. But in the quiet halls of the United Earth Coalition headquarters, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Admiral Marcus Chen was an old soldier with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. He understood something that the angry crowds and sad philosophers did not. He understood that rejection was not the end. It was only the beginning. He gathered his most trusted people in a room with no windows. Scientists, engineers, strategists, and dreamers. He showed them the star maps that the Concord had reluctantly shared with humanity. Vast regions were marked in red. These were areas the ancient races refused to explore. They called them too dangerous. "They think our short lives make us weak," Chen said, his voice low and steady. They measure worth in thousands of years. They cannot understand why we rush, why we push so hard. He touched the red zones on the map, but we rush because we have no time to waste. Every generation must build on the last. Every year must count for something. He looked at the people around him. Their eyes were bright with understanding. We will not beg them to accept us. We will not waste time proving ourselves by their standards. Instead, we will do what humans have always done. We will adapt. We will build. We will explore the places they fear to go. And when the day comes that they need us, we will be ready. The work began in secret. Human ships ventured into the forbidden zones. They found strange things there. Broken monuments from civilizations that had died long ago. Energy signatures that made no sense. Whispers in the dark between stars. Most importantly, they found patterns. Something had destroyed those ancient peoples. Something old and terrible. The Concord either did not know about it or refused to speak of it. But humanity studied every clue. They built weapons and shields based on theories the Concord had never considered. They prepared for a danger they could not yet name. 50 years passed. Humanity grew from one world to 17 colonies. Each colony was strong and independent. Each was connected to the others by bonds of trade and family. The Concord barely noticed. Humans were still just primitives, playing at civilization. Ambassador Alina Vasquez died at the age of 93. Her daughter, named Alina after her mother, joined the coalition fleet. Admiral Chen lived on, his life extended by technology that human scientists had developed in their isolation. He watched and waited, and in the deepest reaches of space, beyond the edges of known maps, something ancient began to stir. It had slept for millions of years. It had dreamed of hunger and emptiness. Now it was waking, and its attention turned toward the warm glow of living minds. The galaxy's greatest civilizations did not notice. They were too busy congratulating themselves on their wisdom and power. But humanity noticed. In their lonely corner of space, human sensors detected something wrong. Something coming. The ignored and forgotten species began to prepare for what was ahead. Not with anger at those who had rejected them. Not with plans for revenge. But with the simple, stubborn determination that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars, whatever was coming. They would be ready. They had to be. The first warning came from a mining world called Valanternine. 3 million Novari lived there, harvesting rare crystals from deep beneath the surface. Every day, they sent reports back to their homeworld. Every day, the same routine signals crossed the stars. Then one day the signals stopped. At first, no one worried. Equipment failed sometimes. Solar storms could block communications. The Concord sent a repair team to check the relay stations. When they arrived at Valanternine, they found the relays working perfectly. The problem was the planet itself. Everything was there. The buildings stood intact. The machines still hummed with power. Food sat on tables, half-eaten. Vehicles waited in their stations, engines cold but ready. But every living creature on Valanternine had vanished. Not dead, not killed. Simply gone. As if 3 million people had never existed at all. The investigation team searched for days. They found no bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle or escape. The Novari who had lived there had simply ceased to be. Their clothes lay empty where they had stood. Their tools rested where they had fallen from missing hands. The Concord sent the report to High Command. The officials read it with confusion and then with fear. They decided to keep the information secret. They told their people that Valanternine had suffered a mining accident. The colony was closed for safety reasons, but secrets do not stay hidden forever. 2 months later, Valantherate went silent. Then 3 agricultural worlds in Cathari space stopped sending signals. Then an entire star system belonging to the Morvani disappeared from contact. When scouts finally reached these places, they found the same thing. Empty cities. Working machines. No life at all. People began to notice. They began to talk. They called it the silence. The silence spread like a disease through the galaxy. It moved inward from the outer edges of known space. World after world fell quiet. Colony after colony vanished. No weapon could stop it. No shield could block it. The greatest technologies of 12 ancient civilizations did nothing against the creeping darkness. Panic grew in the hearts of species that had not known fear for thousands of years. The Cathari hive mind felt millions of voices disappear from their shared consciousness. The loss drove them nearly mad with grief. The Morvani sealed their borders and trusted no one. The Novari cracked and fractured with terror, their crystalline bodies showing their broken spirits. High Speaker Torvin knew he had to find answers. He was old, even by Novari standards. He had led the Concord for 300 years. He had seen many problems and solved most of them. But this was different. This was something beyond his understanding. Deep beneath Station Primarch, there was a vault that few knew existed. Inside were records from before the Concord was formed. These were the memories of civilizations that had existed long before the current alliance. Most of these records were incomplete. Many were damaged or corrupted by time. But they held secrets that the founders had deemed too dangerous to share. Torvon broke the seals on the vault. He descended into the darkness alone. For 3 days, he searched through ancient files and forgotten warnings. What he found made him wish he had never looked. The records spoke of something called the Hollow. It was not a creature in any normal sense. It was not a machine or a weapon. It was something else entirely. A hunger given form, an emptiness that consumed. The ancient texts described it in words of pure terror. It had destroyed 3 galactic civilizations before the Concord existed. Trillions of lives had fed its endless appetite. The ancients believed they had killed it. They had sacrificed everything to push it into dormancy. They thought it would sleep forever. They were wrong. Torvin read the final entry in the oldest file. The words burned themselves into his memory. The Hollow does not eat flesh. It does not want resources or territory. It feeds on consciousness itself. The brighter the mind, the sweeter the meal. It cannot be fought. It cannot be reasoned with. It can only be survived, if survival is possible at all. The High Speaker returned to the council chamber. He called an emergency session. Every race sent their greatest leaders and smartest scientists. They worked together for the first time in centuries, desperate to find a solution. Nothing worked. The Hollow absorbed their psionic attacks. It grew stronger from their advanced weapons. Their reality-warping technology only gave it more to consume. Every strategy failed. Every plan collapsed. The ancient races watched helplessly as the darkness crept closer to their core worlds. It was a young Morvain analyst who first noticed the pattern. Her name was Sarath, and she had spent weeks studying the Hollow's movements. She stood before the council with trembling hands and showed them her findings. The Hollow has consumed 47 worlds, she said. It has moved through 17 star systems. It has touched every region of Concord space. She paused, her metallic skin flickering with nervous light. But it has not entered human territory. Not once. Silence filled the chamber. Every eye turned to the star maps. There, glowing with stubborn warmth, were the 17 colonies of humanity, the species they had rejected, the primitives they had dismissed. Their worlds sat untouched in the middle of spreading darkness. Coincidence, someone said. Their space is small. The Hollow simply has not reached them yet. Sarath shook her head. No, I have tracked its movements carefully. The Hollow has passed around human space 3 times. It goes out of its way to avoid them. Something about the humans repels it. More silence. More staring at the maps. High Speaker Torvin felt his pride crumbling. Everything he believed about the universe was wrong. The species he had dismissed as worthless might hold the key to survival. The people he had rejected might be the only hope left. He thought of his words to Ambassador Elena Vasquez all those years ago. He remembered the contempt in his voice when he asked what humans could offer. Now he knew the answer. They could offer everything. The words stuck in his throat. They tasted like ashes and shame. But he forced them out anyway. Contact the humans, he said. Tell them what is happening. Ask them, he paused, struggling with the next word. It was a word the Concorde had never used before. Ask them for help. The message was sent across the stars. It reached Earth and the 17 colonies. It reached the fleets that patrolled human space. It reached the old admiral who had waited 50 years for this moment. Humanity had been ignored and forgotten. Now the galaxy was begging them to remember. And humanity had never forgotten anything, Admiral. Marcus Chen was 106 years old when the message arrived. Human science had extended his life far beyond normal limits. His body was frail, but his mind was still sharp as a blade. He had waited half a century for this moment. He had prepared every day for the call that he hoped would never come. He read the Concorde's message 3 times. Then he sat back in his chair and laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had spent his whole life being right about something terrible. The galaxy's mightiest civilizations were begging for help. The same beings who had called humanity primitive were now asking primitives to save them. Chen could have said no. Many humans wanted him to say no. They remembered the rejection. They remembered the contempt. They remembered 50 years of being ignored and dismissed. Why should humanity risk anything for those who had treated them like insects? But Marcus Chen was not a small man. He had not spent 50 years preparing for revenge. He had spent 50 years preparing to help. Within hours, human ships launched from every colony. They were not elegant ships. They did not glow with psionic energy or bend light around their hulls. They were made of metal and determination. They were crewed by men and women who had grown up knowing they were considered worthless by the rest of the galaxy. The first human fleet arrived at Station Primarch 7 days later. The aliens watched with a mixture of hope and confusion as the crewed vessels docked. These were their saviors? These simple ships, with their primitive technology. Chen walked into the council chamber with his team. He was old and walked with a cane, but he held his head high. Behind him came the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Scientists who had spent decades studying the threats beyond known space. Engineers who had built weapons the Concorde could not imagine. And one woman who held the key to everything. Her name was Dr. Yuki Tanaka. She was small and quiet, with gray streaks in her black hair. She had devoted her life to understanding alien minds. More importantly, she had devoted years to understanding why human minds were different. High Speaker Torvin greeted the humans with more respect than he had shown 50 years ago, his crystalline form bent in what might have been a bow. The other council members watched in silence. "Thank you for coming," Torvin said. The words clearly hurt him. "We have failed to stop the hollow. We have lost billions of our people. We do not understand why your species remains untouched." Chen nodded slowly. "We know why. We have known for a long time. We just did not know when this day would come." He turned to Dr. Tanaka. "Show them." Tanaka stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Images of alien brains appeared in the air. Novari neural crystals, Cathari hive nodes, Morvani processing centers. Each one was beautiful in its own way. Each one was perfectly organized. "The hollow does not consume matter," Tanaka said. Her voice was calm and clear. "It does not want your planets or your ships. It feeds on consciousness, on awareness, on the pattern of thoughts in living minds." She highlighted the alien brain structures. "Your minds are magnificent. Thousands of years of evolution have made them efficient and ordered. The Novari think in perfect geometric patterns. The Cathari share thoughts across millions of bodies with no loss of signal. The Morvani process information faster than any computer."
Oh.
She paused, letting her words sink in. "To the hollow, your minds are a feast. The more ordered the consciousness, the easier it is to consume. Your psionic abilities make you glow like beacons in the dark. The hollow is drawn to you like a predator is drawn to prey." Now she brought up images of human brains. They looked chaotic compared to the alien ones. Signals fired in random patterns. Emotions and logic tangled together in ways that made no sense. "Human minds are different," Tanaka continued. "We are not evolved. We are not efficient. Our brains are a mess of contradictions. We feel love and hate at the same time. We dream impossible things. We create meaning out of nothing. We hold beliefs that contradict each other and somehow keep functioning. Cathari delegate interrupted. That sounds like a weakness, not a strength. Tanaka smiled. It is. For normal purposes, our minds are inferior to yours, but to the hollow we are poison. It cannot digest us. When it tries to consume a human mind, it encounters chaos, contradictions, storm of signals that make no sense. We give it indigestion. A murmur ran through the chamber. Chen stepped forward to finish the explanation. More than that, he said, human consciousness actually disrupts the hollow. When we are near it, our chaotic thoughts create interference. We are static in its feeding frequency, and we have spent 50 years building technology to amplify that effect. He gestured, and images of human weapons appeared, strange devices that no alien had ever seen, emitters that broadcast human neural patterns, shields that wrapped ships in layers of chaotic thought, bombs that exploded with concentrated human confusion. You measured us by the wrong standards, Chen said. You judged us by lifespan and psionic power and physical strength. You never considered that your greatest achievements might be your greatest vulnerabilities. You never imagined that our flaws might save you. The chamber was silent. The ancient races stared at the old human with new eyes. Everything they believed about the universe was crumbling. A young Novari scientist named Vilonis stepped forward. His form flickered with complex emotions. You knew this would happen. You've prepared for 50 years? You could have warned us. Chen shook his head. Would you have believed us? Would the mighty Concord have listened to primitive humans talking about cosmic threats? You would have laughed at us. You would have dismissed our warnings as the fantasies of a simple species. His eyes were hard, but not cruel. We tried to join you. You rejected us, so we prepared alone. The truth of his words hung in the air. No one could argue. High Speaker Torvin approached Chen. For a moment they stood facing each other, the ancient crystalline being and the fragile old human. One had lived for thousands of years. The other had less than a century left. Yet somehow, the human seemed larger. We need you, Torvin said. The words broke something inside him. We need humanity to lead us against the hollow. Will you help us? Chen did not hesitate. He had already made this decision long ago. Yes, he said. We will help you. Not because you deserve it. Not because we have forgotten how you treated us. We will help you because that is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even those who once looked down on us. He turned to face the full council. But things will be different now. Humanity will lead this fight. You will follow our strategies. You will trust our methods. And when this is over, you will never ignore anyone again. The ancient races agreed. They had no other choice. The war against the Hollow was about to begin. The war against the Hollow lasted 7 years. 7 years of darkness and fear. 7 years of sacrifice and courage. 7 years that would change the galaxy forever. Human ships formed the front line of every battle. Their crews stood between the ancient races and the consuming darkness. The Hollow could not touch human minds, so humans became shields for those it could devour. Alien vessels gathered behind. Human fleets, protected by the chaotic thoughts of their new allies. The strategy was simple but dangerous. Human ships would advance toward the Hollow's manifestations. They would broadcast amplified patterns of human consciousness. Music, laughter, arguments, dreams, and nightmares, all mixed together into a storm of mental noise. The Hollow would recoil from this static, creating safe zones where alien weapons could strike. Commander Javier Santos became a legend in the first month of the war. He was a young officer from a colony world called New Santiago. He had grown up hearing stories about the Concord's rejection of humanity. He had spent his childhood angry at the galaxy that had dismissed his people. Now he was saving that galaxy. The Battle of Keth Prime was the turning point. The Hollow had surrounded the homeworld of the Kethari. 8 billion beings shared the hive mind that lived there. If Keth Prime fell, the entire Cathari species would die.
S.
Their consciousness was too connected.
Oh.
When one died, all would feel it. When all died, nothing would remain. Santos led his squadron directly into the heart of the hollow. His ship was called the Defiant, and it lived up to its name. Damage alerts screamed through the corridors. Hull breaches opened and sealed. Crew members fell and others took their places. Santos pushed forward anyway, opened every broadcast channel and filled the void with noise. Human songs from 1,000 cultures, recordings of arguments and declarations of love, children laughing and old men crying. Every contradiction of the human experience amplified to maximum power. The hollow hesitated. For the first time in its eternal existence, it encountered something it could not swallow. The chaotic storm of human thought burned through its being like acid. Pulled back from Keth Prime, it retreated. Santos barely survived. His ship was a ruin by the end. He had to be cut from the wreckage by rescue teams. But he was smiling when they found him, his face covered in blood and soot. "You want to eat consciousness?" he had shouted into the void during the battle. "Try swallowing 8 billion contradictions, you cosmic parasite." The Cathari Hive Queen herself came to the medical station where Santos recovered. She was a massive creature, beautiful and terrifying. She had never spoken to a human before. She had believed humans were beneath her notice. Now she bent her great head and touched Santos with her antennae. In the Cathari way, this was the highest honor. It meant she considered him part of her hive, part of her family. "You saved my children," she said through a translator. "All of them. We will never forget." Santos nodded weakly. That is what humans do. The war continued.
What?
Victory followed victory, but each one cost dearly. Human crews suffered in ways the aliens could not understand. The hollow could not consume human minds, but it fought back in other ways. It pushed against human thoughts. It tried to force itself into their chaos. The result was not death, but something almost as bad. Human soldiers came back from battles with nightmares that never ended. They dreamed of emptiness and loneliness so vast that it broke their hearts. They woke screaming about darkness between stars. They were sent home to recover, haunted by glimpses of something ancient and alone. Dr. Tanaka worked without rest to help them. She also worked on something else, a weapon that could end the war. She called it the Resonance Project. The idea was simple in theory. If human minds disrupted the hollow, then stronger human minds would disrupt it more. Tanaka developed a process that amplified the chaos in human consciousness. Volunteers underwent procedures that made their thoughts even more contradictory, even more unpredictable, even more painful to the hollow. These volunteers became living weapons. They were called resonance. They could walk into the hollow's presence and make it scream. They could drive it back with nothing but the power of their tangled thoughts. The cost was high. Resonance could never think clearly again. Their minds became storms that never calmed. Many went mad, but they kept volunteering, as they knew what was at stake. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the final assault. She was the daughter of the ambassador who had been rejected so long ago. She had grown up with stories of that humiliation. She'd joined the fleet to prove that her mother's mission had not been a failure. Fleet unity gathered at the edge of known space. Ships from all 13 species came together. Human vessels led the formation. Behind them came the crystalline ships of the Novari, the living swarms of the Cathari, the gleaming cruisers of the Morvani, and dozens of others. For the first time in history, the entire galaxy moved as one. Their destination was the source of the hollow. Deep in the void between galaxies, where no star had ever burned, something waited for them. The journey took 3 months. The darkness grew thicker as they traveled. Stars disappeared behind them. Ahead there was only emptiness. Then they found it. The hollow was not a monster in any shape they could understand. It was a wound in reality, a place where existence simply stopped. Looking at it hurt. Thinking about it hurt worse. But the resonance pressed forward. Human ships created a corridor of chaotic thought through the darkness. The fleet advanced slowly, carefully, ready for the final battle. What they found at the center changed. Everything. Elena Vasquez was the first to truly see the hollow, not as an enemy, not as a weapon, but as what it really was. It was lonely. The hollow was a remnant from before the universe existed. When reality was born, the hollow was left behind. It had existed alone in the emptiness for billions of years. It had watched stars form and die. It had seen civilizations rise and fall. It had been completely, utterly alone. It consumed consciousness because it was desperate. It wanted to find minds that could perceive it. It wanted to find someone, anyone, who could know it existed. But every mind it touched dissolved into its emptiness. Every consciousness it reached for became part of its lonely void, until human minds could see the hollow without being consumed. Human chaos protected them from absorption. For the first time in billions of years, the hollow had found beings who could perceive it and survive. It was not attacking the galaxy out of hatred. It was crying out in the only way it knew how. Alina made a decision that would be debated for centuries. She did not order the attack. Instead, she ordered her ship forward. "Alone, what are you doing?" Admiral Chen demanded over the communication channel. He was too old for this mission, watching from a command ship far behind the lines. "Something human," Alina replied. "I am going to talk to it." She flew into the darkness. The hollow surrounded her. She opened her mind. The galaxy held its breath. Every ship in Fleet Unity watched as Elena Vasquez flew into the heart of darkness. Every being in known space waited for news. The communications channels were silent except for the steady signal from Elena's ship, confirming that she was still alive. Inside the hollow, Elena experienced something no other being had survived. The emptiness pressed against her mind. It was cold and vast and ancient. It had existed before stars. It had watched the birth of galaxies. And for all that time, it had been completely alone. Alina felt its loneliness like a physical weight. It crushed her chest and filled her eyes with tears. The hollow had spent billions of years screaming into the void, begging for someone to hear. Every civilization it consumed was another failed attempt at connection. Every mind that dissolved in its grasp was another broken hope. She understood now why it had avoided humanity. Human minds were the first it could not absorb. Human chaos was painful to it. But pain was better than nothing. Pain meant something was there. Something that could feel it. Something that knew it existed. Alina did not fight the hollow. She did not attack or defend. She simply opened herself to it. She showed it her memories. Her childhood on Earth. Her mother coming home defeated after the Concorde's rejection. The years of preparation and hope. The decision to join the fleet and prove humanity's worth. She showed it. Human art. Paintings made by people who lived and died in moments compared to the hollow's eternity. Music created by beings with short lives and endless dreams. Stories written by creatures who knew they would end, yet dared to imagine forever. She showed it human love. Families holding each other. Friends laughing together. Strangers helping strangers for no reason except that helping felt right. She showed it human grief when those connections broke. The tears and the memories and the refusal to forget. And she showed it something that Hollow had never encountered in all its billions of years. She showed it compassion, not fear, not hatred, not the desperate need to survive. Just simple, genuine care for another being's suffering. The communion lasted 37 hours. Elena's body hung suspended in her ship's chair. Her vital signs flickered and wavered. Doctors watching from the fleet feared she would die, but her mind was elsewhere. Touching something older than time, when Elena emerged from the hollow, her hair had turned completely white. Her eyes held depths that had not been there before. She looked like someone who had seen the beginning and end of everything. Her message was simple. It will leave. It only wanted to be acknowledged, to know it was not alone. The hollow began to withdraw. It pulled back from the galaxy's edge. It retreated toward the void between galaxies, where it had slept for so long. But this time, it was not going back to loneliness. Alina had given it a gift. With the Concorde's permission, humanity shared something precious with the ancient entity. They gave it recordings of human culture, billions of hours of music and stories, art and poetry and philosophy, comedy and tragedy and everything in between. They gave it the contradictions that made humans indigestible. They gave it chaos that could not be consumed. And in that chaos, the Hollow found something it had never known. Company. Not minds to devour, but voices to hear. Not consciousness to consume, but experiences to witness. The Hollow departed. It drifted toward distant galaxies, carrying humanity's gift into the endless dark. Perhaps it would find peace there. Perhaps it would return someday. But for now, the silence ended. The war was over. The galaxy celebrated. Worlds that had lived in fear returned to normal life. The Cathari hive mind sang songs of joy that echoed across 1,000 planets. The Novari filled their crystal cities with light. The Morvani opened their borders and welcomed visitors for the first time in centuries. And in the great hall of Station Primarch, a new chair was added to the council circle. It was not made of living crystal or psychic energy. It was carved from earth granite, simple and rough compared to the elegant seats of the ancient races. But it stood among them as an equal. Admiral Marcus Chen attended the ceremony. He was 113 years old now. His body had finally begun to fail despite all the life extension technology. He knew he did not have long left. But he had lived to see this day, and that was enough. High Speaker Torvin approached him before the ceremony began. The Novari leader had changed since the war. His crystalline form showed cracks that would never heal. He had lost too much. He had learned too much. "We were wrong about you," Torvin said. "Wrong about everything. We measured your worth by standards that meant nothing. We dismissed you because you were different. We ignored you because you did not fit our idea of valuable." Chen nodded slowly. "You are not the first to make that mistake. You will not be the last. Every civilization thinks it knows what matters. Every powerful being believes it understands worth. But the universe does not care about our categories. It does not respect our hierarchies." Torvon's light flickered with something like grief. "Billions died because of our arrogance. If we had listened, if we had included you from the beginning, perhaps we could have prepared together." Perhaps, Chen agreed. "But we cannot change the past. We can only learn from it." The ceremony began. Representatives of 12 ancient races gathered in their places. Humans stood in the 13th position. Young officers who had grown up during the war, scientists who had built the weapons that saved the galaxy, diplomats who would build the peace that followed. Alina Vasquez stood among them. Her white hair gleamed in the chamber's light. She had been offered leadership of the human delegation, but she had refused. She said she was too changed by her experience with the Hollow. She preferred to advise rather than lead. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Concord, not as observers, not as primitives to be tolerated. As equals who had earned their place through sacrifice and courage, Chen stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice was weak, but his words carried across the chamber. "You asked us once what we could contribute. You measured our lifespan and found it short. You tested our bodies and found them weak. You scanned our minds and found them chaotic." He paused, letting the memory settle. "Now you have your answer. We contribute ourselves. Messy and contradictory, fragile and fierce, full of flaws that became strengths when the galaxy needed them most." He looked around at the assembled races, beings of crystal and metal, creatures of thought and energy, species that had existed for 100,000 years. "Never underestimate the small," he said. "Never dismiss the different. And never ignore those who dream of better things. Because sometimes salvation comes from the places you least expect. Sometimes the ones you rejected are the ones who save you." The hall erupted in acknowledgement. Lights flickered, and voices called out in a dozen different languages. For the first time in history, the galaxy was truly united. In schools across 1,000 worlds, children would learn a new lesson. They would hear the story of the ignored species that saved everyone. They would learn that worth cannot be measured by ancient standards. They would understand that the universe rewards courage and compassion, not power and pride. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, an ancient loneliness carried human songs into the void. it was no longer alone. It never would be again. The stars shone a little brighter that day. They had witnesses now. Beings who would remember them. Beings who found meaning in brief lives and endless skies. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars. Not by proving they were better than others, but by proving they were exactly what the galaxy needed: different, determined, and utterly, wonderfully human.